Well, hello there, my dear friends. I'm so glad you could make it today and that we can continue in our studies with Deuteronomy. I'm so glad that I could come outside again today. It's pretty dark inside at the moment, but just look at this brilliant sunshine. However, it is freezing cold, so I'm going to start very quickly, and I hope that I can quickly come to finish. So we're in the book of Deuteronomy, and we've been reading the last few weeks. We've been studying various things here, and our reading for today is Deuteronomy chapter 4 and the verses 13 to 28. And we're talking about the attributes of God. We're trying to, think about who is God, what's God like, what has he done, and so on. And Israel is getting ready, this new generation is getting ready to move into the promised land. They're going into a new season, and it's very important that we know who God is and that God is with us. Now let me just read verse 13 to you. And it says, and he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, that in the 10 commandments, or what the original Hebrew text doesn't talk about commandments, but it talks about words. That is, in the 10 words, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. Now God has come and he has made a covenant with these people. It's not that Israel said, oh, let's go and let's look for the meaning of life or something. Let's go and see if we can find a God who's better than any other gods. And then they found this God, Yahweh God, and said, he's going to be our God. Let's make a covenant with him. It wasn't like that at all. It was God who took the initiative. And we're talking about one of the attributes of God. One of the great things that he is that he is sovereign. And in his sovereignty, he took the initiative. He went and he looked for a people. And we read that God chose the people of Israel in the Old Testament, in Old Testament times. He chose them to be his people. And then he tells us he didn't choose them because they were a great, powerful nation. He didn't choose them because they were very clever or they were very nice looking, but he chose them because of his loving kindness. God made this decision. He chose them because of his loving kindness. And, I just compare that to the New Testament. First of all, Jesus says to us in John chapter 16 and verse 15, I think it is, he says, in chapter 15, verse 16, he says, you didn't choose me, but I chose you. And I chose you that you go and that you bring fruit and that your fruit remains forever. So God is the one who does the choosing. God is sovereign. He will choose whoever he wants. He will have mercy on whoever he wants. And in the New Testament, we see that he's got another people. And this people is made up of people from all nations, from all tribes, from all languages, from all peoples groups. And, although we're all so different, he makes us to one people. And he's not chosen us because we're so good looking, because we're so clever, because we're so powerful, because we have so much influence. He has chosen us because of his loving kindness. You see, he's not changed from the Old Testament times to the New Testament times. He loves us very much. He has called us. Now, Paul writes to the Christians in Corinth, in the church that he planted there, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, and towards the end, he says, just look at your standing, guys. Look at you. He says, there's not many clever people amongst you, not many wise people, according to the standards of this world. There are not many people among you who are mighty or powerful or influential, but God has chosen that which is weak in this world. God has chosen that which is not, the nothings, the nobodies. That's who God has chosen. And this is very interesting, actually very encouraging for us. He didn't choose us because of our competence. He didn't choose us because of our intelligence. He chose us because he loved us. Now, recently I read a book called Thirst. And this book is a biography or autobiography by a guy called Scott Harrison, who's actually not very old, but God has really used him in the last few years, and maybe in the last 20 years, he'd been able to provide many, many people, probably hundreds of thousands of people, with safe, clean drinking water in many countries of this world, in the developing world. But when you read his story, you find out that he wasn't a very likely person to do this, because although he grew up in a Christian house, when he was in his late teens, he left home, he left his parents, he rejected their religion, he rejected them more or less, he didn't come to visit them or anything. He moved to the big city, and through music he got into the nightclub scene and used to organize events in nightclubs, parties and all kinds of things. He lived quite a wild life and was drinking lots of alcohol, and it wasn't just the alcohol, but the price of these stuff. He could spend $500,000 in one night just on alcohol. And of course, designer drugs, they had also played a big role in his life, and it seemed he was very successful, although he confessed that there was an emptiness within him. And one day, one of his friends mixed up heroin for cocaine, and he nearly killed himself with this, and this really shook Scott Harrison, and he decided it would probably be good if he took a time out, if he took maybe a year out and went to do something good for somebody. So he looked for an NGO that he could work with and maybe do a gap year of one year and then come back to his old life. But when he was trying to apply for this job, for this gap year, he wanted to be honest, and on all of the thought forms that he had to fill out, there's a question of whether he consumed alcohol and whether he consumed drugs. So of course he crossed these out. He said, yes I do, yes I do. So the NGOs didn't want to know anything about him, and he applied to an NGO called Mercy Ships, that has ships, and they do a lot of medical work in various places of the world. And he applied for them, and of course they rejected him as well. But then they desperately needed somebody who would do something with the public relations, taking photographs and so on. And then they decided they would give him a chance, but they really said no drugs and no alcohol on the ship. And okay, he agreed to do that. And what he experienced on that ship, through the fellowship and through being close to the people who were working there, and he saw the dedication trying to help people who were in a very desperate state, and then he met the people themselves who were in this desperate state, that put his life on his head, and he found his way out again through Jesus. He then started to help these people, developed this organization called Charity Water. You can Google it, and there's lots to read there. And his book is called Thirst, and he explains and he tells us about how he came to find Jesus again, and how he has helped hundreds of thousands of people. Well, I said how he found Jesus, but actually it's how Jesus found him, because it's Jesus who's looking for us. It's Jesus who's been looking for you. Maybe he's found you already, but if he's not, it's time just to say, hey, Jesus, I'm here in this corner. You can find me here. Hey, I hope you have a good day today. God bless you. I'll see you again tomorrow. You're Bob Hatton, your encourager.